Hello and welcome to Miniature Adventures. I'm Big Lee, and today I want to discuss reading the adverts in newspapers because I'm missing shows. So I subscribe to 3 Wargaming magazines and they turn up at different times, and I find I'm spending longer and longer just reading the adverts and poring over the pictures than I am reading the actual articles. Now, I'm sure I'm not alone in this. I tend to hone in on adverts for new products and stuff, but I've noticed in particular that has increased over the last year, and I definitely think it's because, like everyone else, I'm missing attending Wargame shows and trade shows, and the only way I can see new products is on the glossy adverts inside Wargames Illustrated or Wargame Soldiers and Strategy or one of the other hobby magazines that are out there. While the internet has enabled me to continue shopping, and I've done several videos on continuing to support your traders online, so while I can still shop online, there's nothing quite the same as being able to handle a product and see it with the old Mark 1 eyeball. So even the adverts don't quite get there, and so I am, like everyone else, looking forward to the resumption of some Wargame shows in the very near future. So the latest of my magazines came a few weeks ago, plomp on the mat. They all tend to come about the same time, so I'll come home from work or I'll come down from in here. This has been my office mostly for the last 14 months, for a significant part of each week. And I'll come down at the end of the day and, oh look, there's something on the doormat, and it'll be my magazine. And I'll take it out of its cellophane wrapper with anticipation, and I'll go, oh, look at the cover picture, lovely photographs. And then I'll open it and I'll find myself spending ages actually poring over the adverts, really looking at the detailed full-page glossy adverts, even some of the smaller ones, reading them word for word before I go back and read any of the articles, which is it just struck me last week when I was doing this that this was a completely bizarre way to use a magazine. But clearly it's not. It's something that is a result of having had that social interaction, that personal interaction with new products and companies and friends, shows and conventions or trade shows, been completely missing since March last year. So well over 14 months now since I've been to a show or indeed seen any of my buddies face to face. We've done lots of Zoom games, we've got more games like that planned. We've been exploring different means for playing games, and we now have our first group games scheduled, around people's vaccinations and the rules in England. So hopefully in the next few weeks we'll be having our first face-to-face game for well over a year. But it definitely shows that I've missed more than I thought I would. Because as I say, I've got access to the internet. I've been able to continue to purchase from my regular suppliers, some with delays, but that's understandable. And you've seen from some of the unboxing videos that they've done, I've had no problem spending money. I never had problems spending money. But there is something tangible missing from not being able to visit a show, talk to manufacturers, and see products with your own eyes, and in some cases pick them up and have a good look at them. An advert, even a YouTube advert or something like that, just can't do a figure justice until you've got it in your hand and you're looking at it. And so I'm really looking forward to getting back to that experience, and I'm sure you are all too. Now, sort of a development of this strange phenomenon, perhaps not so strange, is that I've been doing exactly the same thing with really old magazines. So back in March last year, the last show I went to was a small show called Skirmish in Sidcup in South London, and one of the organisers was getting rid of a load of old Wargames Illustrated, and he basically laid them out on the table, piles and piles of them, and he said, help yourself to whatever you want. So obviously we were there before the show opened to the public, so we had a good rummage through, and I picked particular issues that had subjects that were close to what I'm interested in. So things like the Punic Wars and the Pyrrhic War, Second World War, obviously. You know, the sort of periods I already play and interested in. I didn't just take everything, but I came back with a couple of dozen magazines from 20 years ago. And you know what? I've been doing exactly the same thing with them as I do with my new magazines that are coming through now. I'm spending ages looking at the adverts. In some ways it's very funny because obviously a lot of those adverts are pre-internet, and so they're still asking for you to send a self-addressed envelope. I'd almost forgotten about them, so that was quite amusing to look at. But I do actually find reading the adverts is actually as interesting for me as some of the articles. And that's not to denigrate the articles, because they're always very good and very interesting. And it's always good to actually look back at articles written 20 years ago, because you get a feel for how the hobby has changed and how it hasn't changed in some respects as well. And many of these videos that I've been doing for my YouTube channel have been sparked off by something that I've read from a magazine article or an internet article from years ago. You know, and it started a train of thought that's led to a discussion point. So definitely, as always, I'll end on a recommendation and say, you know, if you can get some old magazines, particularly if you can get them for cheap, you know, don't waste money on adverts that are way out of date, but definitely worth getting older magazines, because they're a strange and inspiring source of inspiration, basically. You know, yes, the older magazines may have black and white pictures rather than big glossy photographs, and the adverts may tend to be those tiny little just wordy adverts that you used to get with no pictures or graphics or anything like that, and they may have anachronisms like, you know, send a self-addressed envelope instead of here's our web address. But they're actually quite interesting and quite amusing to watch. And I think I've said this in one of my previous videos, it's always very interesting to look at those adverts and go, that company doesn't exist anymore, or that one still does. You know, it's looking back at the history of our hobby and getting a broader view of you know, the traders, who they've been, where they've come from, and how long they've been around. So definitely worth exploring older magazines if you can. Now, of course, over the next few months, I'm hoping to get back to a few shows. I've got a few penciled in. There's one that I'd like to do, but I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do the travelling, because my daughter's getting married in a few weeks' time, and that's slightly more important. So I'm trying to fit my schedule for the next few months. Certainly some of the bigger shows in the southeast for later in the year are on my hit list, and I'm going to bend to heaven and earth to make sure I can attend them. If they still go ahead, cross fingers, I'm hoping that everything will go ahead as planned. And you know, and I've said it in some previous videos, I don't care what the rules are there. If I have to wear a mask and a full bodysuit, I'll bloody do it if it means I can get to a show. So hopefully I'll see some of you at some of those shows later in the year, because I, for one, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, am absolutely champing at the bit to get back to shows, seeing new products being released, seeing them with the Mark 1 eyeball, and spending my money at trade shows as well as online. So there you go, another ramble from me. I hope you found that interesting. Maybe it's given you something to think about, and obviously if you want to join the conversation, please do so in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe and share. So until next week, look after yourself, continue to get in as many games as you can, and of course, keep rolling high.